Hey, everybody, welcome to another Practical Pet Chat. It's summer. We're all getting together with family, friends, doing a lot of wonderful things. But there are a lot of things that we're doing that are not so wonderful to our pets. Lorin, I am in a place where I hear a lot of loud explosions and other things. And oh, yeah, I live in a nice city. How about you? What are you experiencing out your way? And what are your biggest concerns as we talk about summer gatherings?
Well, I live in Texas, so I used to live where you live, and I thought they were bad, but when I moved out here, holy cow! I mean, the sky lights up, and it's endless. It goes on for days and sometimes weeks. Um, you know, uh, Fireworks are a part of the issue, obviously, for all the reasons that everybody out already knows. It scares animals and veterans, and people who have noise sensitivities. But there's a danger element to it as well, especially if you're having a gathering in your backyard. But there's other things too. And anytime you're having a gathering, whether it includes fireworks or not, there's a lot of things to consider, not the least of which is how many people are going to be there, and the way everything is set up, and what kind of protections you put in place for the animals in your house. Because everybody loves animals, but not everybody should come right at other people. Well, no one should come right at other people's animals because it's overwhelming and it's a lot to take in. The sensory overload for animals is huge. It's
Yeah.
people, it's noise, this is a normal environment. People are in and out of the house, they're in and out of the backyard. They leave the gate open, they leave the door open, in and out of the house, and people don't secure animals that aren't meant to be outside. There's pool issues, there's dropped food, dropped bones, dropped anything issues, whatever anybody's playing with that can be picked up and consumed. One in particular nobody ever thinks about is everybody's barbecue setup is different. And some people have like a tripod type stand that their barbecue sits on. And that can be easily knocked over by a larger kid, larger dog that is startled, or excited or is running, screaming kids. If that screaming isn't normal for those animals, that's startling. So there's a lot of factors to take into consideration beyond just planning the event. That's what everybody thinks about. They plan the event and then the animals are just part of the family. So they're going to be part of the event. And I'm like, oh gosh, please no.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it's just at the beginning before everything takes off and they greet a couple people and then you put them somewhere secure, where they're not going to be let out. They're not going to escape. And there's also the factor of everybody thinks their animals are the greatest, which they are. Mark Twain's saying, and everybody thinks their dog is the best and everybody is right. Um, when an animal is dealing with sensory overload, triggers can happen. Cats can freak out and scratch and bite. Dogs can bite. There's too much going on. They're startled. They're scared. Somebody, grabs at them. That isn't somebody they know. There's all kinds of issues that really it's so easy to take this into consideration and put your four-legged kids in another room and your birds and anything else you have in another room, put on music or put on TV that can block the sound and make sure that that door is secure when you close it. And then you can go on with your event.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that you point out too. Um, there are a lot of different sounds and frequencies coming at them in a quick period of time. And especially when it's your home environment, think about that, right? This is a place that they know they have sniffed to an extreme. And then all of a sudden, this onrush of things comes into an environment that they know they feel it's their job to protect. And then you get into all these other behaviors. And I like you talked about the drop food. How often I find myself as the even as the guest, and I'm going around and picking up plates of food that people
Yeah,
have left to the side while they've been having conversations, or oh, come on and join us, we're horseshoes or whatever other game we're playing. Wow, I just showed my age there on that. Do people still play horseshoes?
horseshoes. I don't
Yeah,
think I've
well,
ever played
cornhole and all the
horseshoes.
rest of that. Yeah, exactly, cornhole, all that. But the whole point is like at a at a at an event, everybody wants to be a part of things. They get really, into it, and they're just setting things down because they don't necessarily have that awareness of,
Mhm.
okay, I've got a dog or dogs that can quickly come get this, and they've got a meal that they shouldn't have. Number one, but number two, that could have things on it that could make them really sick. I
Right.
want to point out another one that is almost universal during summertime. And that is everybody is drinking a ton. I'm not just talking about alcoholic beverages. I'm just talking about they're hydrating, right? We hear it all the hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Well, anything other than water is a huge concern at a get together. It doesn't have to just be alcohol, it can be all of these other things from sodas to other concoctions that you're
Mhm.
so proud of that all of a sudden your pet gets into. And your cat and dog, they don't know whether it's good for them or not, but you can bet they're going to be curious. So don't take that risk. And, I would ask the folks that come over, like, hey, make sure you put it up out of reach of all, hands there other than yours. Make sure,
Well, and
uh,
partly because caffeine is such an issue for animals,
yeah,
right? So there's a lot of
exactly.
caffeine in a lot of sodas, and people don't think about that, but animals can die from
Yeah,
caffeine
and it's not just
consumption.
the sodas. It's just that's the thing these days. The whole thing is combining multiple different
Right.
liquids, and before you know it, you may have this yummy concoction. I'm certainly down for that. What I'm not down for is leaving it where all of a sudden one of the pets can get to it, and now we've got a very dangerous situation happening. Because it's also too that lack of awareness. It's typically not, oh, I just saw him take a sip of that. It's, I don't know what happened in the last 2 or 3 hours. So getting to the vet, you're now, what happened? What was the environment like? Did you see them into anything? Well, we were all hanging out and all the rest. I mean, I've had plenty of my vet friends tell me stories of just so much better. I like your idea of giving them one of their other safe spots in the house. Let them greet everybody. They're going to have that natural curiosity. Um, but then remove them from that chaos. And I like the other thing too that just breaks my heart is closing the gate, closing the ways for the animals to escape, outside, inside, etc. People are coming in and out constantly, and oh yeah, no, I know I closed it behind me. Yes, but why is it wide open right now? And now we've all got to get into panic mode. Do we have everybody, four-legged,
Mhm.
etc., that should be here? So, and on the 4th of July, I mean, I can't tell you how many 4th of Julys I spent just getting in my car after the big fireworks and all the rest of it and going with multiple leashes and little dog treats to come on, get in my car. We'll take you to a safe home, for the night, and we'll reunite you.
Mhm.
We had one neighbor where I actually went to them and said, I've had to find your dog 3 years in a row after the 4th of July. Do you mind if your dog just comes over, hangs with our dogs? And they were like, yeah, that's great. That's not a problem. So that is just so if you got a neighbor like that, a gentle reminder, get-togethers, all that good stuff. Like, hey, you don't have a great track record, and we all love Fluffy, so why don't we have Fluffy come over to our house while everybody's at your house, and they'll be safe.
Well, I was late to this recording because I was helping my neighbor find her cat,
Oh wow, okay.
and it was like, yeah, I could definitely help you find your cat. And her cat was in her backyard, but hiding, and she just
Sure.
couldn't see her. But, it happens like that.
Yeah, and I mean, Not that I want to condemn everybody who does fireworks, but I really don't like you this day, this time of the year. Um, I get it, but your moment of pleasure causes so much terror for so many different people. And thank you for calling out not just the veterans, but the people with hearing concerns. Because, I mean, if you think about that, is it really worth you dropping, and setting off M80s, because you want to be, big person on the block? It's just
To a
not.
lot of people, it is. Well, to a lot of people, it is. And, we can't fight that. So we have to take this route that we're doing, to
Yeah.
try to safeguard the animals because we're not going to be able to control that. I mean, law enforcement can't even control it. There's
Yeah.
signs posted everywhere, fireworks are illegal, as war is broken out, in the neighborhood. And it's like, oh yeah, well, so much for that. And they can't. They
Right.
just can't get everywhere. So this is what we have to do to try to safeguard. One of the things that I wanted us to talk about was people will give um, right before holidays, especially before firework holidays. They'll give something that is supposed to keep an animal calm, whether that's CBD or whatever that would be, and they give it the day of or the day before. So it just doesn't work that well when you do that. You might get lucky, but honestly, if you started a good week beforehand, a week to 10 days beforehand, and
Right.
started off with, regular BID dosing, twice a day dosing, of that, and making sure that the kid was calm and got used to that in a normal environment, so that you could observe and make sure tolerance was good and, see how much is needed. And not only that, if you needed to give a little bit more during the chaotic part of the time, you already know where the dosing is that your kid sort of zones out, and so that extra boost, that'll tell you how much more you need to give. But people give it the day before, the day of, when I had my store, people would come in like literally the day before. And I'd be, oh gosh, I wish I could get you to start a week ahead, and they get it. And I tell them, please next time, put a reminder in your calendar, start a week ahead. If it's not CBD, whatever it is, building up the body's responses to it so that the body, you start to be able to see what the animal's response is and how they tolerate it. Some things make some kids throw up. So you need to know about that in advance. You have to be able to see how much is enough. And you can't do that in a day, especially a day before an event day. And every holiday is an event.
Yeah, because your anxiety and your energy level is
Mhm.
already heightened. And
Yeah,
so you're giving off a different, and they feed off of that. They know something's going on. I like that you talk about too, building that up in a normal environment, because the other thing is if there is an adjustment period, and quite often there is, if it's still normal around them, they're not feeling as overwhelmed by this change that they're experiencing, as opposed to everybody's chaotic. Things are going to, something must be really wrong. And now we've just shifted, not just because of the medication, we've shifted because of, the energy, we've shifted because of the chaos, we've shifted because I don't normally hear or see, flashing, lights and explosions and what's that. And keep in mind too, like, I have the situation where Belle's pretty calm around fireworks. The minute the neighborhood animals all start to get scared and spooked, that's when she joins in.
sure.
And so I know when I start to hear them, I've got to check in with her, and just give her a love, let her know everything's okay. And most of the time she'll be pretty calm. But if I were doing like we were just talking about, okay, here's all this other stuff, too much stuff attacking, all the different systems, the senses, and it can overwhelm even the most calm animal. And I
Mhm.
love that you started off with the quote there because, yeah, we all have the best animal until that moment where they're thrust into a make a decision out of flight or fight. And we just don't know. We just don't know because typically we're presenting that. Now we got you covered. You're okay.
Mhm.
Um,
And the most often response is flight. That's why
correct.
they go missing.
Yeah. No, exactly. And by the way, it's a great call out too. Yeah. While you're doing all this other stuff, um, don't forget when you go to the vet, have that chip checked. Make sure it's reading and it has your accurate info. Because that's one of the more sad ones that I hear quite often is that we had them chipped and thank God we checked at the shelter because the information was old. We don't have that phone number anymore. We don't have that address, etc. So make sure you're doing that. And then the secondary thing is, you know, I have some kind of identification, please. Nothing frustrates me more when Bella's in the house. She doesn't always wear a collar, so I totally get that. But everybody knows, and we've got the collar and it tracks her and all the rest of that. The second she's going to be let outside, which is why it's so dangerous to have so many visitors coming who might open a door,
Mhm.
which means we just have a rule in the house. When we're having visitors over, collar doesn't come off.
Right.
Just not worth the risk. Just not worth it. But make sure you've got an identifier on that because Bella's collar not only has her GPS and all the rest of it, but it contains all of our info. She doesn't necessarily need a little dog tag saying her name and phone number and all that. Yet we have three of those ready to go. And on holidays, we've got a group coming over, folks tonight. That'll be on that collar, even though it's not needed just because it makes it easier for anybody who might encounter her to help reunite us. So,
Right.
but yeah, no, a lot of things to consider there. And then I think the other thing too is, when you talk about those um, loud noises just aren't fireworks. Loud noises are, the
Concussive.
group of folks, yeah, just everybody getting, enjoying it. That's why we all get together, right? But the minute they amp up, what happens with our animals? And if you don't know, go ahead and go out to your pen, go, and you'll see. There we go. By the way, don't make that into a mean people. But from the standpoint of, you might be blasting the stereo. You might be everybody's, having a good time. You got the karaoke going. You got, this and that. It can be any sound that just throws them off their game. It just hits a
Mhm.
frequency. They hear things in a different way than we do. They see things in a different way. They smell things. So just because it's not a big deal to you, it can be a very big deal to our animals.
Well, and fireworks smell like gunpowdery smells, which is alarming to animals.
Sure.
That acrid smell is like, it startles them and they try to get away from it. So it's just everything, the smoke, the acrid smells, the sound, the food. Oh my gosh, I don't want to minimize the food because more kids end up at the vet following holidays than any other time because they pick things up, people feed them things. The numbers of people that no matter how often you tell them, don't feed my kid, don't give anything to my kid, they still slip them something,
Sure.
and is it the end of the world? Well, it depends. Is it covered in barbecue sauce? Is that kid got a sensitive stomach?
Right.
Is there, a bone in it? Is it something the kid's got an allergy or sensitivity to? Is it in combination with the last 8 bites of something they got from somebody else that was told, please don't give anything to them? So just to be safe, lock your kids up, put them somewhere that they can just chill for that event and check
Yeah.
on them frequently.
Yeah, I like that that you brought up too. It's usually not one person, it's the whole
Mm-mm.
slew of them. And so, we've talked about that when we talk about healthy eating for them. Hey, when you're over treating, I mean, that's just got to be factored in on
Hmm.
one of these get together days. Um, the interesting thing is with Belle, I've gotten really good at okay, let me make sure she's full and almost to the point of yeah, I don't need your scraps and food and all that stuff. And we'll pretty much turn away other than for a darn good steak. So if you come to my barbecues, I don't really offer steak too often because I know that's her one weakness. But she'll look at a hot dog, a hamburger, you know. Watermelon is another one of her weaknesses, though. And I was cutting up the watermelon last night, and she was like, one for everybody else and two for me. And I was like, no, but I will treat you so that you've gotten your full, fill of it before we do that. And so before we started recording, I was actually out sitting with her and had a little treat of very cold watermelon. It was frozen, but it's a little warm out here today.
Well, and
So,
think about that too. People need to realize that you can't leave a rind behind because the
oh my,
dog doesn't know the difference between the rind and the watermelon. It still smells the
yeah,
same.
that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, I cut mine off the rind, so
Sure.
uh, I'm fancy like that out here in California.
Yeah. Yeah. Same here in Texas.
No, I love that. But yeah, but speaking of that too, though, by the way, citronella, and all these other things that we use at barbecues, our pets don't read labels. They
Right.
don't know that that's a chemical. They just see it's a liquid. What do? They'll sniff it, and then you
Taste
get that
it.
quick little, yeah, that quick little tongue into it, and now we have a really potentially poor situation. So that's another thing to be looking at around. I know everybody likes their little tiki torches and all the rest of that stuff. Keep the mosquitoes away. Definitely down for that. Let's do it in a safe way, in a safe manner, making sure that just the access to those things, and it doesn't take a lot to set yourself up for success and the safety of your pets. And one of the things that always surprises me is folks, will say, "Oh, well, that's something you've got to do for your dog," and I'm like, "That's something you got to do for a lot of people. You got a huge gathering of people coming over. What are the chances someone is younger and is not going to understand everything that you understand?" To me, that's pretty high. So, I see the little kids as well, and I just go, it's just such a win-win when you take into consideration the dogs, the kids, the dogs. You just removed one extra element of stress,
Hmm.
energy frequency that you're not sending out that's going to disrupt what is otherwise, one of the most amazing, chances for us all to be together. Cool. Love that, but the heartache and the sadness when it's not done is not worth the how much time did it really take for you to consider those things? And by the way, if you're doing it at your place, how easy is it for you to build yourself just a quick little checklist?
Hmm.
And, literally each person in my family, they're responsible for different things. Because here's the other thing, by the way, uh, you put the trash can out for everybody to throw over. You got a big dog like I've got, or even bigger dogs like my siblings have. It doesn't take much for them to put their paws up onto the big can and knock it over, not intentionally. Those are some incredible smells, Dad. I'm gonna,
Yeah.
just explore, knock it over, and then they're in there. Watch out, So be
By
safe.
the
That's
way, our mosquitoes in Texas laugh at citronella.
well, they do out here as well. They, that's their breath freshener for them. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. That's a whole other thing. We've never done one on client safety for pets that I think would be great because I also see a mistake there where folks have planted something because they want to mitigate, mosquitoes or this bug or that bug. And I'm like, great. I hope your dog doesn't chew on that by
Yeah,
accident.
so many of those things are not appropriate for
Yeah.
pet-friendly
So
yards.
yeah, and cats even more so inside the
Yeah,
house.
yeah.
And so, yeah. Well, I think we covered a lot. I think I pretty much made sure I'm not invited to anybody else's barbecue, so I'll have to hold my own through the rest of this summer. But it's worth it if we help you all be better safety awareness folks for your pets because it's preventable. That's the thing that is always the most gut wrenching. If it was preventable, why didn't we take the time for these beautiful beings that we love so much? And that's how you got to look at it. I know you got a lot on your plates. We appreciate you joining us here at Practical Pet Chat. Don't forget, you can share your tips with us and your stories, practicalpetchat@gmail.com. But as always, Lorin, thank you. To all of you listening, thank you for joining us as well. We'll see you again next week.
Thanks, everybody.
content of this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended as, nor should it be construed as, professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment for your pets. Always seek the advice of a qualified veterinarian with any questions you may have regarding your pet's health or medical condition. Never disregard professional veterinary advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. The hosts and the guests of this podcast are not liable for any actions taken based on the information shared during these episodes. Any reliance on the information provided is solely at your own risk. Copyright 2025 Practical Pet Chat, all rights reserved. Unauthorized duplication, distribution, or reproduction of any content from this podcast, including but not limited to audio, scripts, and show notes, is prohibited without prior written consent. The opinions and views expressed by the host and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Practical Pet Chat.